Welcome back to Two Nobodies, everyone. Just the one nobody again today, Rupesh here. And we have another fantastic guest who I'm going to introduce in a second. Hopefully folks have been enjoying the other episodes that we've just been posting, and we have a lot more guests to come. So our next guest today, though, really excited to welcome Callen McGibbon, who contacted us, and I think we're going to have a great conversation. He's a strength conditioning coach, has trained some really elite athletes, which strength conditioning is just something that I've always been interested in, and so look to talk shop about all those kind of things. But he's also an entrepreneur, and excited to kind of hear about that world, because that's just, whenever I talk to an entrepreneur, it's just fascinating, and understanding how they would have adopted those risks and how they would have moved forward with their ventures is an interesting ordeal that I always admire. So Callen McGibbon, thank you so much. Welcome to Two Nobodies. It's a pleasure to have you today.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm grateful to be here.
That's great. You're in Sudbury. What took you to Sudbury?
Holy moly. So my now wife, we were not married at the time. We both wanted to kind of do separate vacations one summer. I was into sport bikes at the time, so I wanted to go riding. We were living in Toronto, and she wanted to go out west, and I was like, I don't really feel like flying. So she went out to Vancouver to visit her uncle, and I got on my sport bike, and I spent 5 days touring around Northern Ontario on my bike, just camping. And I just fell in love with Northern Ontario, and I had taste of it growing up as a kid with my grandparents in Parry Sound, and I just really loved it. So I came back, and we spent another couple years in Toronto, and then kind of started talking about moving and kind of changing, getting our careers kind of more rooted. And I did some research, and it turned out at the time Sudbury had the highest average household income in the country, but it also had the highest unemployment rate. And it produced the most professional athletes per capita than any other place in Canada.
Interesting.
And I was training in Toronto, and I was like, you know what?
Yeah.
I love the North. Let's go for it. So we packed up, and away we went. No friends, no family, no anything, and we started our lives up here. And now, I guess I always go by my oldest daughter, so it's like 20 years ago now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you say 28?
No, my oldest daughter is 20 years ago now.
20 years.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I always, has anyone else joined you from your family, or you're still kind of loners up there?
No,
or?
just us. We came up. They all come and visit, obviously, but nobody else moved up. It was just us. I think everyone's scared of the cold and Sudbury, the moon, and there's all these kinds of stories because they trained for the moon here because mining was, there was so much damage from the mines back in the day before obviously the advanced technologies and such. That they trained for the moon here because it was all rock, but I mean it's not like that now. It's beautiful and green and lakes everywhere. It's gorgeous.
Is there not much mining going on still in Sudbury?
No, there's lots. I mean, it's really kind of a mecca for innovation with respect to mining. But just innovation technology, right? Like it's all safe, it's regreened, it's beautiful. It's just a great, beautiful place. So cost of living's good.
Yeah, I always have told people that because I live in Edmonton, but I'm from Ontario, born and raised in Toronto. But when we drove out to Edmonton, I always thought the best part of the drive was around the Great Lakes, like around Lake Superior. By far is my favorite drive in the country. A little bit like, it's a single lane sort of drive, and it can be a little nerve-wracking at times, but I just remember that drive really being beautiful. But even driving to Sudbury, especially when you're driving from Toronto into Sudbury, like the landscape just changes a little bit, and it's very different. But I don't know anyone from Sudbury, so it's good to know somebody there. And interesting to hear that it's I didn't know those features of it, like you said, the highest per capita in terms of athletes coming from there, and but also highest income as well. So what kind of athletes are we talking about?
At the time, uh, it was like anyone professional, so being
Yeah.
paid to play, so that would be like East Coast League, in
Okay.
Europe playing hockey, wherever.
Mm.
Those stats have all changed now. This was 20 years ago, but
Right.
that's what drew us here. And there is an
Yeah.
incredible amount of great athletes that come out of here. Um, you know, well, they've been a huge part of my career, right? Like, so,
Right.
so yeah, there's a lot of them that have come from here that I've been super fortunate enough to be a part of, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And were you an athlete yourself?
No, not at all. I grew up in a trailer park just outside of Barrie, Ontario,
Okay.
and so it was really rural. And because it was out of town, right? Like I didn't have access to like schoolyards or anything,
Mm.
and I came from like a lower income situation, so I didn't I didn't take part in sports or do anything, zero. Um, it was just go play on trees and stuff.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
Run around and use your imagination
Yeah.
in the bush.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but it turned out okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I mean, I kind of wonder if like creativity, and you probably seen this with the athletes that you worked in, but do you find that creativity nowadays in sports is kind of lost? It's more structured. Like, have you heard Wayne Gretzky say this about how back in the day when he played and when he grew up, it was you just picked up the puck and you just kind of did your thing and you figure out how to be creative because there wasn't that structure. But nowadays, while the athletes are just at another level, the game is so much more structured and there's not, I mean, you have those exceptional players who are just incredible with the puck, but just generally the creativity has kind of gone down in hockey but also other sports.
I would say uh, yes, but the ones that I find are like the ones that we all are in awe of are creative.
Mm,
Like so I think it's true that structures become part of the game, but the systems are so and statistics and like all the things that are wrapped around professional
right.
sports now, like it's really hard to go against those numbers. Like if you just looking at the NFL now, and this isn't my profession by any stretch, just
Mm,
watching it. Just the amount of times that you see now, like they make the call on the sideline, should we kick a punt, should we punt now or not, and the stats come down, like 68% of tries with this play or
mm,
that, result in a first, like statistically the game is just with the data that's around now, it's just changed so much that you know sometimes creativity is wrong too, right? and
mm,
and I just I think that I think we lost a little bit of creativity, but I actually feel like the next wave is going to be like a blend of creativity and the systems and structures that we put in place that have elevated the level of sport to the level it is today. Like, you could be a creative athlete today, but if you didn't have the performance metrics that are out there right now, and probably more importantly the genetics, uh, you couldn't make it, right? Like you you just need that level, and you need the genetics.
how much has those performance metrics or the data been a part of the way you approach your craft?
Well, a massive part. So, I'm a data person, so
Okay.
I believe in transparently showing athletes what we're doing is working. And the only way
Mm,
to do that is to assess and reassess and assess and reassess. And and you you really have a lot of responsibility as a coach, especially, we say in the we put it all on the higher ages, but really I think it's more important to be have that structure in the younger ages, because if there is any kind of potential, if we're going to talk high level sport here, if there is
mm,
a potential, then that's the most influential time, really. And so you could really waste a year, and at that in major sports, like a year between the ages of like 15 and 18 is like
It's huge.
it's massive. So
Yeah.
you can't. It's actually probably more important further down the chain. You could probably
Mm.
argue it's even further more important even further down than that. Like into like eights, tens, 12s, 11s when you're really talking about building, long-term athlete development pathways through fundamental learning skills. And so I would say that it's the thing that I've leaned on probably the most in my career is the data, you know, being very transparent
Do
with it.
you do you think that like has the and I haven't been in touch with this in a while, but has the testing for like especially at the elite level, where we're talking about athletes going to that pro level, has the testing kind of evolved for how they measure athletic performance, or do you think they're it's kind of trailing behind, or what does that look like?
Um, I think the strength conditioning industry is kind of interesting because it's young, right? I would
Yeah,
almost
yeah,
I would almost call it like immature professionally at times,
mm,
where there's been times where I think that the industry was growing at such a rate and the science behind it was evolving so fast that almost too much weight was going into it
mm,
over like play and like just the craft of sports and creativity.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Um, and and I think that influenced testing for a short time. But because the craft is very young, I feel like they're adapting quite quickly now to the really understanding what the value of testing is and what we actually should be testing. Um, just over the last 3 years, I've seen a pretty big shift in clients that I have that are in NHL with respect to what their teams have been asking them to do just in the last 3 years. It's changed
mm,
from 3 rep max squats to, a vertical jump test.
mm.
Like what are you really trying to accomplish by getting a $5 million person to do a 3 rep max squat at training
It
camp?
doesn't
Like,
really
what's it
tell
tell you?
you. Yeah, it doesn't tell you
and
anything.
and I think it does give you some insights, but I would say that the risk reward is not there, and the repeatability of that is not there. So, you know,
Mm,
a vertical jump you could do once a month all season long, and you can actually really understand what's happening to the athlete throughout the season if you have
mm,
something that you can do repetitively that's not going to injure them or potentially
right.
make them sore, right? That would hinder performance.
Mm,
Whereas, putting 400 pounds on someone's back and having them squat it 3 times, there's a risk there, you know, and
absolutely. Yeah.
and it's not really repeatable, right? So in that manner, right? Like in a hockey season, it's not really repeatable.
Mm,
So I've seen it really shift, and it needs to shift further to things that are repeatable, that are non-invasive, so that we can also start to understand, we can tie that to injuries, right? Someone gets hurt, we can be like, okay,
mm,
well, your vertical jump score on average is 28.5 inches, and after you've gone through this protocol and you're able to jump again, your jump now is 21 inches, so you've lost a significant amount of leg strength. So we should work on that, you know, over the next period so we can try to get that back up. In season that would be hard, but at least the awareness is there and the structure and can be put in place in order to help that athlete get back to that level of
mm.
performance they had or ability they had, right?
Yeah.
But it needs to be
Yeah.
a repeatable thing, right? It needs to be something that's non-invasive, that's repeatable.
Yeah. No, I mean, you want to be able to compare those year after year or month after month or whatever that looks like.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
more frequent, the better. You know, the
Yeah.
more frequent they are, the
Yeah.
better. There's 3 things: something to measure upper body, something to measure core, lower body. It's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder your answer to this. I don't know if you know John. If you heard the name John Donaher, he works with George St. Pierre or
Okay.
I think he's still he's one of his coaches. I forget. I think he's a grappling coach or a jiu-jitsu coach or something like that. But anyways, he was on a podcast with GSP and another grappler, and he was asked about strength conditioning and its influence on someone's performance at that very high elite level. And I suspect your answer to this will be maybe it's sports specific, but what are your thoughts about like at that elite level, how much difference does strength conditioning make to an athlete's overall performance versus something like let's say focusing on skill development or nutrition or
Oh, I would say at the elitist of levels, it's going to be a maybe a it's hard it's a hard question to answer because without having it on the way up, you most likely wouldn't have made it.
Mm,
So it's kind of like a pyramid. Like you need it in the beginning to create this massive foundation so that you have the ability to learn your craft and
yeah.
adapt at your craft the way the physical demands of the environment are asking you to. So if you're not
Right.
physically prepared enough, right, to go to practice, then you can't learn the craft. Strength conditioning
Mm,
isn't giving like making you a better hockey player. It's or a better
mm,
football player, basketball, whatever. It's giving
mm,
you the ability to learn the craft when you get to practice at these higher and higher levels without your physical attributes getting in the way.
mm.
Is that clear enough?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so you need it on the way up, but then when you're at the top, it's really it's probably contributing fractionally at the top in a time frame of your career, maybe between let's say 24 to maybe 30. So for 6 years, I would say it's a very small contributor. It's kind of keeping you at this level where you can perform at your greatest, and then it
Mm,
starts to become more important again.
mm,
So as you get over the age of 30, now it starts to become a thing where it's like, okay, I gotta really dial in now. I gotta focus. And that doesn't mean you're training harder. You're just doing things that your body needs in order to continue to perform with people that are younger, right? Faster, have
yeah.
more energy. And in the sports, that's sad to say that at 30, that's the truth, but that's the truth, right?
Yeah.
Um, so you now it needs to change, and you can still be just as fast as them at 34, 36, but
Mm,
now it becomes important again. So I would say it's like like a mountain, right? Like it's
yeah.
very big, important at the beginning, becomes not very important, in the middle, and then it becomes very important again at the end, right?
So when you're talking about those athletes that are in their prime, so let's just say generally ages of maybe early 30s or less, what are you trying to focus on from a strength conditioning perspective? If you're talking about, their skills are maxed, they're at that really peak level. Where's the tinkering focus on?
The tinkering becomes individualized to the style of player, the style of game,
Yep.
and your expectations go down to like 1%, half a percent improvements, because you're
Mm,
talking about people that are already like incredibly good at, especially if you're talking about somebody like hockey who's very multidimensional, you know,
right.
game or athlete. You're just looking at trying to make small fractional improvements to each system in a summer, and the system that's most important to that particular person's style of play. You know,
Mm,
if they play a strong physical game in the corners, uh, then that's the things that you want to kind of make sure are at their peak or you're improving. You know, and if they have a couple of weaknesses, you want to obviously work on those. But at that point, you know, you're really just focusing on what's keeping them in the game, right? And that style
mm,
that they play is what keeps them in the game. You can't train them to be somebody else. That's what they do. you know,
yeah.
so you can focus on speed, but if speed's not part of their game, their success, then it's not. It's such a loaded thing. I could get blown up for this, but like,
Yeah.
obviously speed's relevant if you're playing a professional sport. You have to
Yeah.
be
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
ridiculously
Yeah.
fast.
Yeah.
I'm just saying you've really got to dial in to the specific person's game style, right?
Yeah.
And what is that, and work on that.
What do you see like what's the mental approach that you see from those elite level athletes over the course of that? Like, do you see that there's less interest at certain stages, like maybe at that prime level, but then when as they're getting older, they're like they know they have to put in this work to kind of maintain or hang with those younger athletes, or like what's the mental? Do you see any general or common mental shifts over the course of an athlete's career?
Um, I would say the common mental piece I see is like at the elite level is these athletes are extremely competitive,
Yeah.
and it's really takes a lot of awareness as a strength coach in those environments in those elite years to not fall prey to that level of competition when you're writing programming
Mm.
and allow that to influence what the right thing to do is.
Mm.
Because you can get caught up in the fact that you're working with these genetic specimens that can just continually squat more weight, bench more weight, power clean more weight,
Mm.
and you can get caught in that because it's fun to train someone that can just genetically get better every week.
Right.
But
And especially if they want to really go there too, and they're pushing you that they want to push more, right? So,
yeah, and
yeah,
your job is to make sure that like you kind of don't in a certain
yeah,
extent, right? Like
yeah,
there's aspects that you do allow it and there's aspects that you don't fall prey to it and you maintain like the level-headedness of it, and you got to
yeah.
try to create environments where you can fulfill this desire for them to push and be better in a direction that makes the most sense for them currently, right?
Mm. Yeah,
And because you got to be careful with them, they'll blow themselves apart.
absolutely.
They'll do anything to be better than, to win, I guess, not to be necessarily be
Just
better.
that
The
competitiveness, right, comes out.
competitiveness
So,
inside them is just absolutely unbelievable. Like
yeah,
everything. You take a
yeah,
break from a drill for 5 minutes and they're trying to flip a water bottle onto something. And it's a competition. Whoever can do it
right.
first, or like because they're trying to rest, but even at rest, they're trying to figure out, you know, who can throw a pylon through a rock, who can throw a rock and get it to go in the top of a pylon. Like any way they can find a way to compete at any moment, they're doing it.
Is there a sport that you particularly really enjoyed training?
Nah, I like them all.
No. Okay.
Yeah, they're all wicked. They're all cool.
Yeah.
They all have their
Yeah.
own uniqueness and thing that's and I don't think it's so much the physical attribute because I'm fortunate. I was a strength conditioning coach at a university for over a decade, so I got to work with tons of sports, right?
Yeah.
I'm lucky, and and I don't think it's necessarily the sport itself that I uh, uh, I don't think I found a sport I wanted to work with more than the other, or found more interesting than the other.
Mm.
What I loved about being able to see different ones is the psychology and the culture around different sports. You know,
Mm.
uh, like just the athletes themselves, like in that training environment, what it's like to be in a training room with the rowing team as opposed to the wrestling team, as opposed to the hockey team. It was so cool to see the different culture that's just there within these different sports, right? That
And how they approach their sport, how they approach training. Yeah, their still lives and
how they approach their friends, like how
yeah.
they approach their teammates. Just such a cool that was such a cool opportunity. I'm so grateful to have had that type of stuff happen for me in my career. It's just been so neat to see that stuff.
Which university did you train at?
Laurentian University.
Okay, so that's where you spent those, like you said, 10 years or so.
Yeah, I was there for I think well we left when COVID hit, so in 2020,
Oh, okay.
uh, March 13th, 2020,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
didn't go back. So opened up our own
Yeah.
facility and just it keeps growing like a weeds, and so we just didn't go back. And I had another company going too, and you know what I mean. Like I'm a pretty entrepreneurial person, so I had
Yeah.
already had like a ed tech company going, and yeah, I actually
Mm.
own the company that was at Laurentian University. It was a contract, so we provided the physiotherapy, massage therapy services, all that to the campus at large. And
Okay.
so I owned the company that did strength conditioning for varsity and all that stuff, right? And I worked
Oh,
as a
so you,
strength
you
coach.
didn't you didn't necessarily work for the university. You were kind of sort of contracted out. You had your own company going, and you
That's right.
provide services to Lantern.
And
Okay.
we rented space from LU. We rented, I think, about 1,800 square feet, like a physiotherapy, athletic therapy clinic. And
Cool.
I had a team, and we provided all of those services to the school. So,
Yeah.
and it was just a wonderful time in my career. I just loved it. What a great environment. And for me, anyways, I learned a ton and got to experience a lot of things and work with great athletes at the university level and the community level and NHL and Olympic teams and all kinds of stuff. It was just a wonderful time. It was really cool.
Yeah, I remember. I mean, I was a strength coach for the men's basketball team at the University of Waterloo for about 4 or 5 years. But when you talk about the diversity and just kind of seeing the different approach, like I would see the other teams from afar because I'd be in the weight room with the basketball guys, but I'd see like the approach that like, the volleyball team would be taking to their training or whatever. And every athlete was very different, right? Like my guys they'd go in the weight room for a little bit, but they really just wanted to hoop, but the footballers, they were really dedicated. They were really intense about it, right? And then even just seeing the male female differences between the athletes was interesting. So I think I kind of understand what you're saying, but yeah, it's a unique experience for sure.
I used to laugh at them because I'm always like, go, go, go. Like, I want to get everything done. And,
Yeah.
everything's got to run on time. And so I would always laugh because we'd be going back to the strength conditioning room to train, and the basketball guys would always be waiting on the couches in front of my clinic. And I'd start walking there, and I'd get to the back room, and I'd wipe the swipe card on the door, and I'd turn around, and I'm like, where are they? And then the door would open, and they're at the end of the hall. I'm like, how is the tallest guys on campus the slowest walkers? Like, just mosey, just like such a chilled
There's a culture and
flow.
attitude, man. Yeah.
It was
Yeah,
crazy.
for sure.
And they just have such a chilled vibe, but really great bunch. Just I fell in
When you
love
get
with
them
all
when
the
you get them
kids.
going though, they
Oh
get
yeah,
into it, but it just takes some time. But yeah,
yeah. I fell in love with
yeah,
all of them. They were all just so great.
yeah, cool. So you said that was that your first sort of entrepreneurial thing then, that business or
No, I owned a health food store too. My wife and I
okay,
opened up a health food store. We ran that. Um, and then for the health food store, we opened up a training company, and the training company grew to be the company that provided all of those services to Laurentian University.
mm,
And then I opened up an ed tech company as well. So I've had three
yeah.
companies and like like I had a charity organization going for a while too, and so yeah, I'm a pretty entrepreneurial guy.
I wanna understand more of that mindset before I get into that the health and fitness element of it. Like, where did that come from? Where is that something you always found yourself in the health and fitness, or like what is that? How does that story come about?
Well, I think it's a combination of things. My mom and I, growing up in the trailer, we didn't have like access to a lot of stuff, but my mom
Mm,
knew like like being physically active was important. And with limited resources, we would do like hikes, or we would get something from a garage sale, like a piece of workout equipment that people were throwing away or something like that,
mm,
right? So we would get that stuff and we would drag it back. And so she was kind of like influential with like respect to just being active, and then my environment of being like just out and climbing and just doing whatever, and having to get places. I had to run to get places, right? Like it wasn't like, I didn't take a bus. So if I want to go visit a friend on a concession line over, like
yeah.
you just ran, right? So I figured out really at an early age, like I think I understood I say this, and I wish at some point I'm going to describe this in a way that is going to be like perfectly articulate. Maybe it's today, but I found out at a very early age, I think like the power of understanding I could control my breath. And
Mm,
and I say that because now I practice, a pretty strong amount of meditation, and I do a lot
mm,
of like um, deep breathing drills.
mm,
And I think I knew early on that like I knew how to control my breath. So I'd run, and I get, you get winded and you get tired and you get scared when it's early in your, you really don't
right.
understand it as a kid.
Yep.
And I was able to figure that out some way. And it really became a tool for me that kind of got me through, I think, my whole life. I think it was a way for me to like I was undersized, and it was a way for me to be confident in situations at school that, where I would get nervous if there's like a fight in the schoolyard or things would kind of go wrong, and I get this tightness, but I knew what the tightness was.
Mm,
So I was able to like take deep breaths and breathe, right? And I think it may sound silly, but I really think it was like the foundation to like me understanding like that if I just could continue to learn how to like make this better and breathe
yeah.
better and really control my breath and control my physical state, that I was generally happy and I was in a good place all the time, and I certainly wasn't growing up in an environment where I like it would be easy to be happy. So I but I was, and I think I was able to align that to being physically active at a very early age, and it just stuck. It just never disappeared, and it's really been like a huge part of my success my entire life, to be honest with you. It's just that understanding of my physical being and that I could control how I felt. And I was somehow drew a lot of conclusions to that, like the,
And I would assume, first of all, that's just incredible that, just being so self-aware of and being able to control that at such an early age. And I want to hear more about sort of how that's kind of helped you in sort of situations now when you're kind of going through those anxious states. But I would assume that when you're in those situations, like your heart's beating and you're like, okay, I know how to control this, you're probably also starting to make links about like what's actually happening, like physically, like what systems are in play here. And like, did you find that there's that kind of discovery into like the human body as a result of that?
yeah, there really was for me.
Yeah.
And I just kind of started, develop like looking more, right? Like, okay, well, what
Mm.
happens if I do tons of push-ups, or, you know what I mean? If I do tons of squats or
Yeah.
sit-ups, or, you know what I mean? And then I wanted Joe Weider weights, because then I was like, well, what happens when I lift weights, right? Like,
Right.
and it just became this place of like self-discovery, and it was like the way I just loved learning about it, I guess, just naturally, right? And I still do today. I've been doing this career. I just wrote an article for our website, and I've been doing this career for 22 years now. 22 years now, and I have not woken up one day not excited to go to work. So,
And you feel like and so do you feel like just that being able to control your breathing and being able to use that as a way to push through things has really helped with that, or
100% I do.
yeah.
Yeah. I and now I know it to be true, right? Like now
Right.
I've read
Yeah.
research articles, and you know what I mean,
Yeah.
now I know it's actually scientifically true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then I was just a kid, just exploring, and that's why I'm in this career today. Like I just love learning about like the human body, and it came very like natural to me. I really do love it.
I want to hear about how, if and how you've incorporated that into REPerfomance in your current venture. But like now thinking about when you go into this entrepreneurial mindset and just that must be a hard thing, first of all, just to kind of put yourself out there. I always admire people who can just really take control and really put themselves out there and take those risks and go for what they want to work towards, especially on the business side of it, because I can imagine it's so competitive and cutthroat. But just walk me through kind of like, especially like that first business, but even just like you've now two other businesses on top of that. But that mindset, how does that come into play?
I think it's again bred out of that early days of just you know being influenced by physical activity, because I
Yeah.
had the ability early on to not. I think it builds so much confidence in kids, in anyone, like not even kids, like in any human being at all. If you were to put them in a situation where they were nervous, and then you were to take them and you were to put them into physical training and good sleeping habits and good nutritional habits for
Mm.
3 months, and then put them back in that same environment that they were scared of, I guarantee you they will not approach it with the same mindset.
Mm.
They will go straight after it. They're
Mm.
gonna have the same emotions, but they're not gonna not do it. They're gonna do it. And I think that having this physical kind of early understanding, early desire to learn more about my physical state created so much like self confidence,
Mm.
and a desire to do more. And and my mom, of course, was huge. So
Mm.
I saw this woman, go through everything, you know,
Mm.
and never a day went by where uh, I felt like poor or hard done by or anything, right? So, I mean, I think that I'm a product of that environment, and today I just feel like I can do anything, and it might not be me, but I know that if I have the right attitude and the right energy and the right you know my morals are in the right place, then I can do it, you know? And I'll need teams and I'll need help, but I'm not scared to ask for that stuff. Like, I'm not scared to ask for help. So I'll just go get it, you know? And that's how I've done all my businesses. I just went after it, you know? And
Are there situations that you find though that you are challenged by where you're like, I don't know if I can do that, or
oh my
and
God,
then
yeah. Oh my God, yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah,
Like there's been times in my last this my most recent venture, the tech venture, where yeah, I was like, holy jeez, like I'm gonna lose everything,
mm,
you know. But you know, you just kind of write it out, take a couple of deep breaths, you know, you process where all this fear is coming from, and generally it's coming from like, you know, well, my kids and wife still gonna love me? And I'm like, well, yeah, of course they're
right,
still gonna love me.
yeah,
Like fucking like, yeah, like are my friends gonna love me? Yeah, they're gonna love me.
yeah,
Like I'm
yeah,
not a bad human being. It just didn't work out, right? Like I tried as hard as I could. So then you're like, okay, I tried as hard as I could, and now you're starting to open the door to thinking in the right direction, and all of a sudden opportunities come again, ideas
mm,
come again. Maybe if I tried it this way, maybe it would work. You know, now you've opened yourself up to, you know, pivoting or, you know, looking at it from a different lens. Um, you can't ignore the emotions though. Like you can't ignore fear. That's just not smart. Um, but
they're there for a reason,
they're
right?
there for a reason.
Yeah, yeah,
I learned a lot of that stuff from my wife. She's just been like
mm,
the greatest partner ever,
mm,
with respect to like making sure that I didn't bury things,
mm,
you know, and like really be aware of if I was feeling scared or anxious, and you know. But um, yeah, you just I feel those things like everybody else.
yeah,
They said I just take a deep breath and okay, am I going to be okay? Yeah, I'm going to be okay. Is it going to hurt?
yeah,
Yeah, it's going to hurt. You know.
yeah.
Then you start thinking in the right direction, and ideas come.
Is there when you think about your kids and sort of like just having that mentality, what have you kind of shared with your kids, or what kind of coaching or advice do you give them?
Um, I tell the I try. I mean, now they're like in the teenage years, you know, so they're
Yeah,
obviously way smarter than me.
yeah, yeah. They totally are.
so I try not to do too much now. I just try to
Yeah.
like, you know, lead by example, and you know, they see me get up early and, you know, meditate, and well, they don't see that because they're sleeping, but you know, sometimes they see it, and they, you know, they see me stretching, doing yoga, and they see me exercising. They see my day timer. They see the way I'm methodical about writing out my day and planning
Mm,
each month, and I write my goals, and like they
mm,
see my system, right? And so more now it's about them seeing the system that I have in place, than it is talking to them as much as I did when they were younger, right?
mm,
About like, write it down. You know, you want to do it, write it down and share
mm,
it with me. You know, like, and let's come up with a strategy, and you know, and you know, eating right and stuff. It was a little bit. I was tighter when they were younger than I am now, right? Now I
mm,
want them to start to make decisions and make mistakes and screw up, because you can't really learn without those. So you gotta go through all that stuff. I don't want to. I I wouldn't qualify myself as hard because I'm not. I'm very loving and nurturing, but I don't shelter them from failure.
mm,
Like if they fail something at school, because they I'll remind them that the responsibility of school, but I let them fail though, you know, because I want to see them deal with adversity. Because if you adversity is like, you know, it's everywhere your whole entire life, and you know, if you can't overcome things on your own, you know, and breathe and make this, you know what I mean?
mm.
Like if
Yep, yep.
you, you you're really going to be in a lot of anxiety for your entire life.
Yeah,
And the
yeah.
opposite to, I guess, what would be the opposite to anxiety, right? Resilience.
Mm,
And adversity builds resilience.
mm-hmm.
So it's I now I kind of more along that lines, right? Like I'm watching them and kind of letting them fail and seeing what
Yeah,
they do.
that's something that we're having a hard time with my 4-year-old because she, and I don't know if it's just a phase or something like that. She hates to lose. She's just like it's like this even if it's something like snakes and ladders or the sense that she's just like gonna lose. She just wants to throw up the whole board and just she just doesn't want that sort of negative feeling to hit her, right?
Yeah.
And I just want her. We always just tell her like this is going to be a part of life, and but she's 4. I don't know how much of it registers, but it it's a little bit concerning for us about like how is she going to work through this, but I'm sure she will. But yeah, it's encouraging also to hear you say about how they watch you through your system and they watch your habits and all that, because like my little girl, she'll join me like 7:30 in the morning when I'm in my gym downstairs in the basement, and
Yeah.
she'll watch me train, and I'm always hope that will rub off on her in the future. I mean, if she wants to be physically active as well, but you hope those habits get built in. So it sounds like for your kids, at least some of that's wearing off. So
Yeah. The product of environment
yeah,
to a certain extent, right? So
yeah,
I just make sure the environment's around them that's positive environment. That's my job,
yeah,
like as their parent. Like I put an environment around them that's a good quality environment.
mm,
Their job is to, you know, pay attention and learn from it and absorb it and build those then this build an understanding of how those systems impact the direction of your life, right?
yeah, yeah.
So it's cool. Parenting's, well, it's a crazy task.
It just feels like it feels like the ultimate leadership responsibility. That's what it feels like.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a big
yeah,
task.
yeah, yeah. Um, Thinking about your sort of so you did you still train elite athletes, or you kind of walked away from that and just focus on this tech venture? Or
No, I still do, not as much. I still
yeah,
own like a large training company that
yep,
operates in Sudbury, and I have a team of strength coaches, kinesiologists, and
yep,
stuff that work with the
yep,
clients. And try to pass most of my wisdom and knowledge and stuff. I work more with the staff now than I do with the
mm,
clients. Um, but then I have a portfolio of NHL clients that I do work with in the summer times,
mm,
and I've made commitments to them for their careers, and I'm gonna stand by my word, right? So I'm gonna
yep.
stick with those folks until their careers are done, and then I'll hang up the stopwatch. You know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That'll just be weird, I think, probably for
Yeah,
you, hey?
I always tinker around, you
Yeah,
know. I love the
yeah,
gym, so I always tinker around, but not 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 the same way that I did in the earlier parts of my career for sure. Like, and I'm not as valuable in that way anymore either. Like I'm more valuable doing the things that I'm doing now because I'm
mm,
creating more opportunities for more people. I'm creating more jobs. I'm providing value to, kids across the country and
mm-hmm.
teachers, and like I'm more valuable doing what I'm doing now than I am that, you know. So there's much more value in me developing my team to do it than it is for me right now, you know.
Was that a hard shift in your mindset to make though?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was hard. I was scared to let go of doing as much training as I did. You
Mm,
know, I was scared to let it go. It took a lot of took a long time to trust the team, but I
mm,
realized, well, if you're not trusting the team, then you're not doing your job. So
mm,
I'm not developing them as much as I should be. So, I started to put more time into them, um, and then you start to see that pay off, and you start to realize like everything's going to be fine without you, and then you got to deal with everything's going to be fine without you because there's a whole other basket of
yeah,
emotions, right? You're like,
yeah.
you build this massive brand, and then like it doesn't need you anymore, so then you got to deal with that. Um, it doesn't need you in the same ways. It still needs you, but not the same ways. So yeah, I mean it's a big shift, you know. But my desire and thirst for learning and challenges really got me like head over heels into the tech venture, and my passion for like health, right? Like
Mm,
and wanting to have an impact not just one on one as a strength coach, but what if we could train 100,000 kids a day, right? Like, so and you lean, so it was like, well, technology could probably help us with that, right? So that's how, and that's just feeding the same. It's technology, but just feeding the same passion I have every single day, which is like to give more and more people the tools to be able to stay physically active for life. That's
Is that what the real drive behind REPerformance was? And am I saying, is it REPerformance or is it,
yeah.
yeah, REPerformance? So is that really the drive behind that platform, or?
It is. I mean, it's gone through lots of changes
Yeah.
inside me, like over the years, like it's pivoted and changed a lot. As a real true purpose kind of kept coming to the surface,
Mm.
which really is, that's the drive, right? Is to you know, give kids the tools to be able to understand how to work out for life. Like that's a skill set that I think has been uh I mean, there's some crazy stats out there, right? Like 96% of kids don't play sports after high school.
Mm.
And phys ed is traditionally a sport rotation, right? Um, so really, are we equipping them to be healthy for life if 96% of them are not going to play sports after high school,
Right.
right? If we're teaching them basketball, what are we doing that for?
Mm-hmm.
I don't I don't think that's not phys ed's fault. I learned those games in school and it was great. I had fun. Because I was fit, not because I was good at them. I sucked at
Right.
all of them.
Right.
So I got good at them fast because I was fit,
Mm.
right? So, but um, like we learn math and reading and writing, and we learn these skills so we can be equipped to be like successful in adventures we take on in life, right? Um, so I think phys ed is shifting fast, right? Like now there's personal fitness classes in every school across the country. And there's some school boards that are introducing that now in grade 9, like as the option for kids not to have to take phys ed and but be able to take personal fitness class coming
Mm.
out of grade 8 into grade 9. And we have a school in Sweden that we work with, and they do it in grade 5. Right? Like sports are not even a huge part because this, and what has happened is the sports system outside of school has gotten so much better
Yeah.
because they just took it out of the schools, right? And they just put in like orienteering, swimming, fitness, life skills, right? Like if you know how to navigate yourself through the woods if you ever got lost, right? Know how to
Yeah.
swim, so if you
Yeah.
ever, so you can save your life swimming. Like know out wilderness outdoor skills, right? Like understand fitness, yoga, tai chi, meditation, breathing. Like these are skills that you can do by yourself in a state of survival, and you can do them for your entire life, pandemic or not. And I think that's obviously the direction phys ed's going, and the issue is that's a very individualized experience,
Mm.
right? Like my training program, your training program, another person's training program, all have to look different in order for us to succeed at them.
Mm-hmm.
And as phys ed is shifting, right, in the right direction, it's very challenging for teachers to be able to individualize the experience with 36 kids in the room. Sports was great for that, right?
Yep.
36 kids, there's going to be 5 kids that are great at, each sport rotation, and a bunch that are not, and a bunch that are going to hate it. But it was easy to just corral them all into that, as opposed to how do you corral them all into a fitness room and make sure they're all safe, make sure they have something that's appropriate, right? And that's
Especially if
what.
these teachers don't have the capacity to be able to think on an individual level, right? So.
Well, and how could you? I've been a
Yeah.
strength coach for years. I worked at the university level, like even, and so did you.
Yeah.
Like you have what on your basketball team? Like, what did you have? Maybe 18 on the roster.
Yeah.
Like, and how hard was it to create individualized
It's
programs for
tough.
18 of
Yeah.
them?
Yeah.
It's tough, right?
Yeah.
And you had one team, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's tough, and you have them for an hour. Imagine 4 phys ed classes back to
Absolutely.
back, that not university students who are athletes who
And who
probably have been
care and are
exposed to training.
dedicated, yeah, and are dedicated to it, right? Yeah.
And have probably been exposed to training to
Yeah.
be there because I
Yeah.
don't think you're that old.
Yeah.
So now put yourself in grade 9 where maybe just the luck of the draw, 85% of the kids that are there are only taking it because they have to. So how do you influence them to be healthy for life?
Mm.
if they're only taking because they have to and they hate sports, you teach them fitness, but you got to make sure that you give them a pathway that's geared towards them, because it's critical that they fall in love with it, because it's their health. You can learn all kinds of things in school, um, you know, chemistry, physics, geography, English, and those are great skills, but you may not use them in your profession. But your health is with you for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's the most important thing, and I know how it's affected myself, and I know how it's affected, you know, leaders and business professionals I met in my life. I've been fortunate enough to meet, and you know, their health is critical because they need it in order to function at the level they function at. And you know, I want those opportunities for every kid, no matter their demographic. I want them to have those skills. Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is that what you saw from sort of traditional phys ed programs was, you'd have these kids play different sports, but that sort of translation into what that means for their future health and fitness, that wasn't always very clear. And how they're able to use, playing basketball for fun or playing volleyball for fun, they're doing that. But then in terms of what they take away from that and then move forward on with their life, that part seemed like it was missing. And is that something that REPerfomance is really trying to address? Or
Yeah, and I'm not like the pioneer of this, right?
right.
Like education, the education system is moving this way very quickly.
Mm.
We just saw the challenges that were being put upon the teachers, right? The ground troops,
Yep.
as they're trying to move with the speed at which the curriculum is shifting, and how they're trying, and the barriers that they have to individualize that experience for kids.
Mm.
And so that's where we decided to kind of, that's where we kind of aligned, right? That's where we matched. Like, okay, well, we've got this platform that actually individualizes the experience for every student.
Yep.
So, and then we just had to adapt it in order to help the teacher, right? Because it already helped the student. We just had to figure out in the early stages, how does it help the teacher, right? And then once we figured that out, then we started to scale.
Mm. So then your platform actually gives sort of individualized coaching and instructions for each of those students that's on the roster? Or?
Yeah, it does. So it uses it uses an assessment base, right? So it's I prefer to call it like self-assessment. So the students are able to create like their own assessment of choice, and like go through that experience on their own. There's like video to teach them how to do the drills, and they do them. Because assessment is something that builds the capacity for you later in life to be able to be the judge of whether something is right for you or not. And I think it's been we thought it was standardized testing. We thought it was fitness testing, and the history of fitness testing has shifted from the early nights. Murky before the 1900s, but after that, it's kind of starts to slowly take shape. But it was really kind of influenced. I think it was by Krauss and Weber in the 1946, because of the research they had done on North American children versus European children, and it was at the beginning of the Cold War. And 56% of North American children had failed these 6 basic fitness tests, and only 8% of European children did. So it caused a huge alarm, right? So fitness testing became kind of like a test, and it became organized into the education system around the world. Really, it really started to kind of proliferate, and that was fine because that's what we knew kind of at the time, and that's okay. It wasn't coming from some ill place. It was like, okay, we got to make sure that we're safe and that these kids are safe if they ever had to go, God forbid, to go to war. They were prepared physically
Right.
enough to kind of, in a life or death situation, to be able to take care of themselves, right? But it never really evolved anymore, right? Like everything else has evolved, the way we talk to one another, like inclusion, diversity, everything's evolved, but that kind of got stuck, and it didn't really move forward. And it's a shame, because assessing is really this ability, like I'd mentioned, for you to be able to understand, to be the judge of whether something's right for you or not. And in phys ed, you can kind of use a self-assessment for a student to be able to, like, okay, I want to to look and see how I'm doing at these things. And then you can give them a program. And what the assessment does is it allows the AI to build a program that's geared specifically to their needs, right? Now you've got something that they can succeed at, right? That still challenges them, but they can succeed at. And then as they go through it, it uses machine learning code to learn their behavior so it can regress or progress the activities based off how they're learning. And then they can reassess themselves and they can be the judge as to like what just happened. You know, why did this get better? Why did this not? Right? And now that's opening up a really great learning environment for the teacher to capitalize on. Because the teacher now is in a place where I'm not. They're in the room with the student, and now they're going to get high quality questions. Because when a student's asking high quality questions, you're winning as a teacher because now they're engaged in the learning process. They're in discovery, right? They're in discovery. Now you can bombard them, right? Well, this is why this got better and this didn't. And now you can teach them because they've told you they wanted to learn. They've asked for answers, you know? And the assessment loop allows that process to help. And it builds a positive feedback loop. It builds them the ability to understand, like, well, I did these exercises and they made a difference, but I don't really care about that. I'm more interested in this. So maybe change exercises, right? And see what that does. How does that affect your health? And now they're actually learning how to build a program, how it affects their health. They're building these skills and they have them for life. And that's what the platform really does in a nutshell.
Very cool. Well, were you apprehensive about going this route in the sense of, I'm assuming that as a trainer that you probably very much wanted to be very hands-on, and you know it's important for strength conditioning coaches to offer those kind of physical cues, whether it be, you know, teaching something, a certain technique or whatever. Like, was that sort of, did you have a hard time being like, I don't know if I can do this the way I exactly want to do this because this is how I kind of did it with at that elite level? Like, was there any apprehension that way?
No.
Okay.
Because it's different. It's a different
group.
It's a different group.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I want the age groups that we focus on with our platform in North America are grades 7 to 12. I'm interested in those kids falling in love with moving. Do I want them to move correctly? Yes, I do. Right? I mean, the platform is there. There's videos there to teach them the 7 principal movement skills, and that stuff's all there. You know, am I there? No, I'm not. But if my platform is a tool that makes a teacher's job incredibly fun, then now I've unlocked their potential to be with the student. Right? To talk to them, to share cues, to do that stuff. If their job is overwhelming and not fun, then they can't do that stuff because they're doing other things. So the platform delivers that. Here's the environment to make your job wicked because we're going to look after all of this so you don't have to. Now you can invest all of that positive education, time, energy you have in the students into these things, right? So I think that's where the partnership comes, right? Like, I mean, I'm sure each tech founder has its own interesting spot where, like, because tech obviously creates a separation between you and the customer.
Yeah.
So that's where I think your innovation has to be great, right? Is it has to unlock the potential in your customer to be better.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what our goal is with our platform. It is the same goal every day, right? How can we make it better? Right?
I mean, you said something interesting.
Every time we make it better, we make the teacher's life better.
Yeah. You said something interesting.
Go ahead, sorry.
No, that's okay. You said something really interesting, and that is about you wanted to get these kids to move, and of course you want to get them to move correctly. And so, like, there's, you know, you have the videos, you have the training, all that. But I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, just getting them to move, that's huge, right? Like, I mean, obviously, if you can get them to move perfectly in the way you want them to, you know, I'm assuming, I don't know all your 7 principal movements. I could probably guess them, but obviously they're foundational probably for a lot of just day-to-day activities and everything that we do beyond just playing sports, right? And so you want to be able to have them do that correctly. But if they're starting at a place of where they're not even interested in physical activity and you're actually able to move the goalpost where you can get them there, that's a massive win. So I guess I just wondered, because for me, like, I'm like, the corrective movement piece is huge for me. And so I'm like, I don't know if I could But I think just yeah, if you could inspire and get people to move, that's a huge win.
Yeah. And when you're inspiring them and they're having fun and they're engaged,
Yeah,
then they're going to be more open to learning how to do things, correctly and, with proper form so and techniques. So I think you have to start there and you have to understand your audience, right? Are like go back to the stats, right? Like, what are the stats? 96% I think don't play sports past high school. Only 1% play competitively past high
mm,
school, and the 1% that make it to college, university, it's less than 1% that play on past that.
mm,
So, I'm concerned with everybody doing everything right and correctly, 100%. But I also am aware of my audience. I am
yeah,
aware that I want them to be engaged and learn and be in joy so that they actually open up the willingness to do it properly,
yeah, yeah,
and knowing that there's not an expectation on them to be a certain thing. It's an expectation on, I guess I don't have an expectation on students or the next generation of our youth to be perfect. My expectation is that they understand the value of
yeah,
their own health.
yeah.
That's the expectation I have of them,
Yes, yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like that. So
yeah,
don't have to move perfect.
yeah, yeah. No, that makes total sense. The tech platform itself, like you're not, are you a techie? Like how did this come about? Like, I mean,
No.
like that's it. You talk about applying machine learning and all this stuff. Like that's where do you even start with that?
Oh my God. Uh,
Like,
all over the
and that did
place.
that kind of hold you back at all? Be like, oh, I have this vision, but I don't know where the fuck to start on this. Like,
Yeah. And I just, again, not being afraid. So I reached out for help.
mm,
I contacted this guy that was actually he was a sports psychologist, and he was our mental strength coach
okay,
and my team.
yep,
And in Sudbury, it's a small city. There's not a full-time position in that career here, right? Like, you can't do that. So he had taken on a part-time job at another institution, College Boreal, and his role was to merge private business with uh, um, uh, post-grads in research opportunities. So I reached out to him and I'm like, hey, I got this idea, like, um, and I need some help. Like,
mm,
I don't understand anything about computers. So he hooked me up with a young gentleman who is still with me today, and he's our head developer. And he was just coming out of school, and this is like a legit, true, crazy startup story, man. Like, and he was just coming out of school, and it was just the two of us, and I was like, this is kind of what I want to do, and we started kind of building it, and I was. I just in the beginning I was funding the whole thing myself, right? Like
yeah,
I was just and just trying to figure it out, and it was crazy. We were like in the car, we were driving to like Northern Ontario. So I imagine like all provinces is very like it's spread out,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So like we would like drive to New Liskard to try to get a coach to try it in a local gym with some students, and like it wouldn't work, and like it was insane. We drive to New Liskard from Sudbury is like 2.5 hours, and we would have to do it after work,
yeah,
so we'd leave at like 6, and then meet some, and then we get back at like 12, and
yeah,
we'd have to get up at like 5. I'd have to get up at 5, go to
yeah,
work.
yeah,
Like the early days were insane, like insane, and trying to get people to try it and use it, and we wanted to be there, right? We wanted to see what went wrong. Like we want to see the
mm,
customer use it and figure out what was going wrong. So, um, yeah, it was a crazy experience. And then you just kind of slowly recruit people into the team as it grew.
mm,
Yeah, you break apart, and I mean break apart, you break a person. You're like, okay, I can't do any more. Like we need another human.
yeah.
So then you bring another human in, right? And like now we're 8 full-time staff, and we'll be growing again this summer, bringing more in, and
How many years has it
just keeps
been?
going. That's 8. We started kind of like beta stuff in 2017,
Okay.
like really just kind of like trying to get beta, and then uh, research, you could call it
Mm.
this, and then trying to formulate idea, concept, beta, product things, and then we really got some headway, and then we slowed down. We took our foot off the gas for about a year while we waited for some patent filing. We have 2 patents in the U.S. and 2 in
Mm.
Canada. Um, and then we put our foot back on the gas again in 2019. Really got things going pretty good. And then COVID hit, and that kind of was,
Mm.
posted its own challenges.
Oh.
Um, and then, and in some ways, actually, it was great for us. And then it kind of actually during COVID, it kind of started to take off actually,
Mm.
and then it just started a rocket ship, and now it's like this, you know, roller coaster ride we're all on, and everyone in the team is just such cool, great, unique people, and I'm a firm believer in like I like development. Obviously, being a strength
Mm.
coach, like I love development. So whether it be physical or human development, I love it. So I like young people, getting them in early, like really getting them to fall in love with the culture and like what we're
Mm-hmm.
doing. And I probably have made mistakes as is CEO leader of the company by not going out and getting, crazy, experienced, awesome people that have proven track records. And I think that's a fault I've made at times for sure. Uh, but I really love fit, and I
Mm.
really love teamwork, and I've valued fit over skills at times in order to make sure that our working environment is wicked, and we have that. I'm very fortunate to say we do have a really wicked working environment. I love all of these. I call them kids. I love them all like they're
Yeah.
my kids, and and I think that's important. For me, it's been important. Like, it's not for everybody, but for me, it's been important because that part really fuels that helps. That's the juice for me to really push even harder
Mm.
than I push now, because now I want to just drape all these guys in
Yeah.
success. Like, I want all their dreams to come true.
Yeah.
And uh and I'm not sure, I don't think those emotions would be real, if I maybe followed uh the money side too fast, you know. Um so and I think they feel it, right?
For sure, they're
And
gonna
it
feel
makes
it. Yeah.
them passionate about what they're doing, and focusing on what's right.
Mm.
And sometimes it's hard. You have to have, patient investors and investors, and that's why having the right investors is critical, because you have to have the ones that understand your
Mm.
mission, and they have to believe in it. Um, so, and I'm fortunate enough that I've been able to find some of those to come along with me on the ride. Um, but yeah, there's a lot to it. There's a lot to it, especially when you want to do something big. Not growing, like, I own companies in Sudbury. I
Yeah.
mean, they're great, and I'm grateful for them, and they're wonderful livelihoods, but they're not big.
Mm.
you know, like, this is
Yeah.
big. So, if you want to do something big, it's a completely different game. There's a lot to it.
Well, I was gonna ask you. I mean, that I was you got into it, and I was gonna ask you about sort of your leadership approach, because I mean, you said you want to train for some time, and that's going to kind of continue. But I mean, this is like it's you've had a few companies, but this is something that's really moving. And so I was curious about your leadership approach. But you talked about like the whole fit piece, and there's a lot of research to show that, like, if you look at one element of that is trust, right? And if you could have somebody who is a really high performer, but if you can't trust them and they don't have that quality within them, they're dishonest. It's actually better to take somebody who's kind of a low performer and somebody you can trust. It's a better fit for the overall team. There's lots of research to show that. So it's interesting that you look at fit. But is there something that you're kind of uncovering, or where you feel like you're working at from a leadership perspective, that you are recognizing maybe as a gap, or something that you had your blinders towards maybe?
Oh yeah, totally. Uh, like, to delegate more.
Yeah, it's a hard one.
Like, Yeah, I'm not super good at delegating. Um, because like I just love what I do.
So is it from the control
And
perspective or just purely the love piece?
I think I think it's I've been getting better at it the last like half a year.
Yep.
Specifically, I've been working on it like the last 3 months. Um, but I think it's probably I'd be ignorant to say it's probably not a blend of
Mm,
both. I think it can't be that. I think it, of course, I think it's a control thing. Um, but it's also just like a love thing because like I am the one that will like do more and like I'll do it all. So like, but I gotta resist that, not because I can't do it all, because I'm not being a good leader. And I've that's the hard part I've had to learn is that like you you're not going to develop these kids that you love so much to their capacity if you don't like push the boundaries for them like I did for the athletes.
for sure.
Like I got the athletes to the top because I wasn't afraid to push the
Mm,
boundaries of what they could do, right? And I'm holding back my staff from getting to the top by not pushing the
mm,
boundaries of what they can do. And I haven't. That's probably the best way I've ever said it so far.
it's
That'll
pretty
probably
good.
help
Yeah.
tomorrow. um, so, and I haven't been necessarily great at
Mm,
that. I haven't adjusted well at that. So I'm looking forward to becoming better and better and better at that, and understanding it's
mm.
okay, right? And if they need my help, that's why I'm here,
Yeah.
right? Like if I push the boundaries and they come to me and they're like, okay, I need some help, then I'm like, okay, great, right? Like, boom, right here. So is it resources? Is it another person? What is it? Me? Like what is it? Right? So I can't be afraid of that for
Do
sure.
you find yourself like how much focus do you spend on sort of creating that safe environment for them? Because I mean, especially if you're talking about some of these kids who are coming out of school and you're taking them on, that probably would be very difficult for them to kind of challenge you on things or kind of tell you what they need, I would think.
Yeah, I don't know if I struggle with them telling me what they
Mm,
need. I don't think that's one that I've run
mm,
into. I'm sure it's there, but it's not one that I
mm.
have. Um, but I think it's more of like knowing that it's okay to
Yeah.
challenge them,
Yeah.
you know, from my side. And if I think they know how much I care about them, so they're able to talk to me about anything, right? Like, they're able to say like, hey, that was too much, or so, and I just have to trust
Yeah.
that because I know how I feel about them. So why would I know? I don't have anything to be
Yeah.
afraid of.
No, that's yeah, for sure. I'm looking at the time, and I just want to. We usually have a couple questions that we always ask our guests, if that's okay. The is it okay if we pivot to
Sure.
those, or some of these are kind of get to know you a little bit more, even though.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
So first one is
yeah.
a five for dinner question. Dead or alive, who are five people that you would want to have a meal with? And be curious if you would have them kind of together in one big meal or individually. And Kyle, the other nobody, has added sort of what would you serve them, and if you had thought about what kind of meal you would have with them, I guess.
Okay, well, right off the hop, uh, my nanny passed away
Mm,
years ago. I would love to have her because she was a really cool influence for
mm,
me for some teenage years, and she'd just be great to have back to have a meal with. And for that matter, my opa on the other
yeah.
side, um, he would be great to have back too because he was this great influence in my life younger, and I didn't in my teenage years I didn't spend as much time with him, so it'd be really nice to see him and just tell him like I did
Mm,
notice the things that he taught me, like and I do think it's a huge part of the way my brain
mm,
thinks. We didn't even get into that, but like so those two right off the top. Um I would say there's a guy who has a podcast that I've been hooked on for the last year and a bit. This guy, Dr. Andrew
okay.
Huberman, uh, really intelligent, incredibly bright man. He's a neurobiologist. Um, I would love to have him for dinner. I wouldn't have him with my grandparents, mind you. I would have him kind of. I would like to have him for dinner with probably like Jordan Peterson.
Okay.
I'd like to have those two for
Yeah.
dinner,
That'd just be a
and have a
cerebral
conversation.
as hell. That kind of conversation.
It'd just be a
Yeah.
cerebral
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
blast. It'd be
Yeah.
wicked.
Yeah.
And so I'd love that because I really love to kind of, I wouldn't say study that
Mm.
stuff, but I definitely dive a lot into that stuff. So I'd like to have those two, my nanny, my opa, and a fifth. Uh, just a night with my
Yeah.
wife.
Hey, she made the list, man.
Yeah, yeah, man, a night with my wife. Yeah, like just and I would have dinner with my wife, and we'd go out somewhere. So we didn't have to cook or clean because you're
Yeah.
cohabitating, right? So you don't want to
Yeah.
do that all the
Yeah.
time. So I want to go out somewhere. It doesn't really matter where, anywhere. It's all great with her. She's great company. Um, and then my nanny and papa, I'd like to make them dinner.
Cool.
I got a big green egg, like for a
Mm.
barbecue in the backyard. So I like to make them something cool, like maybe some probably like I like to cut my own meat, so I'd cut some steaks and probably do some like roasted
Mm.
tomato and broccoli and stuff, and a little oil sauce or something on the grill, and then have dinner with them and just shoot the breeze. And then the other two, I made these burgers before. They're crazy. It's like you roll up a ball of meat and you take a cold beer can, you push it into the center of
Okay.
it, and then you fold the meat up, and then you slowly slide the beer out, and then you crack an egg inside it. You make like a beer
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
cuppy, like those things you
Yeah.
stick your beer
Yeah.
cans
Yeah.
in. I don't know what they're
Yeah.
called. Um, so and then you take the beer can out and you crack an egg inside it, right? And then you cover the top in cheese, and I bake them in the barbecue. They're just ridiculous hamburgers. So I'd make those, and with like probably a bottle of red wine and like an Amarone or something. And I would sit and have like a cerebral night with those guys in my backyard. I got a pretty sweet backyard, so I would have Huberman and Peterson in the backyard.
I gotta
Cook those
create a clip
burgers.
for you and then tag them somehow, and then there's your dinner. Because I feel like that sounds awesome, man. You're not gonna turn that down.
Yeah, that's exactly what I would
Yeah.
do. Uh, yep, that's how I'd roll that out. It's a tough question though. It's a really good one though. I've
Thanks.
never been asked that one before. I've been on lots of podcasts. I've never been asked that one.
We've had so many different answers, and I find it kind of reveals a little bit about the kind of person you are. I've seen some. I've done it with friends, and then I can kind of pick across like from those five. I'd be like, okay, this is what it tells me about you, and generally it's kind of accurate. So it's an entertaining question, and people have enjoyed it. So I'm glad that you're able to roll with it. You have a little bit of German in you. Is that why you say Opa or no?
Yeah, he's
Ukrainian.
Ukrainian
Okay.
actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and then my nanny is from France. My Oma is from
Okay.
Holland, and then so my nanny and papa.
Mm,
So my nanny's from France. My papa's a
mm,
Canadian, and then my Oma and Opa were
mm.
Ukrainian and Dutch.
Yeah. It was all
So
that time in history. Everyone's kind of mixed around and stuff, right? So
oh
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. Um,
They were meeting during the
yeah,
war.
yeah. My wife's maternal grandparents were there during the war. They were German, but her Omi, or I guess Oma, but Omi is kind of more of the village term, I guess. But she was from
Yeah,
Hungary, right? But yeah, just everyone kind of got mixed around there. So yeah. Last question.
very
Besides
cool.
the circle of life, what do you know for sure?
Hmm. What do I know for
Hey, I gave
sure?
you this question ahead of time, so
I would say, what do I know for sure? I know for sure that you can, I'm trying to find a way to like eloquently say this and not ramble on. It's been a lesson that I think um, for me has been really critical in being successful and happy. But I think what I know for sure is that silence provides you the ultimate truth that you need to hear, and you just need to make time for it. And I know that to be true in every scenario I've ever placed it in. It's only ever given me the truth. So, and I think in today's time, with how busy we are and what's going on in the world and our ability to find out about it at such a rapid speed, it's really difficult for people to get into that silence and allow what comes naturally to them as thoughts, because some of them might be
Totally.
scary or they make you feel vulnerable. I know that those though are truth for you. So, and you got to embrace them, and I know that to be true.
Yeah, it's interesting, eh? When you sit in silence and you just absorb it. It's just like, yeah, those just something starts to come out, right? Let's and if you in being able to acknowledge that, like you said, could be very uncomfortable, very scary, and for a lot of people. But you're probably right. There's a lot of truth with that. Interesting. I like that. Callen, it's really nice talking to you, man. It was great getting to know you. Great to hear about sort of your mindset and your history and how you kind of, how you just evolved to as a strength conditioning coach, but also just at this as this founder and CEO of this latest tech venture. And appreciate you reaching out. And we'll put all of Callen's information in the show notes and the description and where you can access him and all that. But just appreciate your time today, and hopefully you enjoyed your time in our conversation as much as I had, and look forward to maybe connecting in the future.
I very much loved it. It was great. Thank you very much. You put a great smile on my face, and it's just a great time chatting with you. You made it just wonderful.
Thanks,
So
Alan. Appreciate
thanks,
it.
man.
All right, everyone. That's a wrap. We'll see you next episode. Thanks. Bye.